I'm happy to take care of admitting people from the waiting room if that helps.
Thanks, Jenny. It should. I just allowed everybody in, so they should be coming in, but there could be, sort of stragglers still. So thank you. That is very helpful.
And is there a setting to turn off the ding dong?
Yeah, there is actually. Thank you. Let me do that. Do not play a sound when people join. And that may be something that you can individually set. I know I just turned it off for myself. So,
okay. All right, I'll just keep an eye on the corner over here.
Thanks, Jenny. That's great. Thank you very much. Okay. Hi, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. Bear with me. There we go. Very good. Call to order this special meeting of the Easton Board of Education on December 2nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. Members in attendance. We have Jenny Cheetah, Randy Hicks, Gretchen Goldstein, Devin Weibel, and Jeff Parker. The first item on our agenda, I'm just going to share my screen to make it easier for everyone to track. And can everyone hear me all right? Okay, all right, good. There we go. Good. The first item is public comment, and the way that we indicate that you're interested is to simply raise your hand. If you go to the participants window, you should be able to raise your hand using that mechanism, or if you want to turn on your video and wave at us, you can do that as well. So I'll just look for folks. It looks like Kim is raising her hand now, and anyone else who wants to get into the queue, you can raise your hand in the participant window. I'm gonna just ask you to unmute Kim. And if everyone can remember, we're trying to keep it to 3 minutes of public comment per person. We have some good stuff to get into tonight. We want to make sure that we reserve the time for that, but we also certainly want to hear from the public. So Kim, you should be able to unmute now. If you can just state your name and the street that you live on.
Hi, my name is Kim Moranti, not Fox Nantora, on Sweetbriar Trail. I have 2 children at SSES. I just received the email from Dr. Harrison. I am a former teacher. My husband's a physician in the area. I have to say, I'm disappointed in the decision for Easton and District 9 to go full remote. I like to think that we're keeping our children's best interest in mind. I see the numbers and I know they're rising, but I also know our town, and what makes it so great and so special is that it's small. And I am worried that we're looking at numbers that aren't reflective of our town. When this first started, the ICUs were overflowing, the numbers were high. Now the ICUs are not at full capacity. We are testing more, so our numbers are going up. I'm not sure that's the meter we should be using to determine closure. Our leaders, the governor is telling us to keep schools open. Our neighbors are staying open. Trumbull just said that they're going to be going 4 days next week. Westport's open, Darien open. I see my children, they're 5 and 7. I don't know what the future ramifications of this are, but I don't want to rest on well, they're young and they're resilient, they're going to be fine. I don't know if that's true. And I want to know that my children's best interest is what's being taken into consideration. And every other option is being used, whether it's pulling an able body from one subject area to cover a class if there's no substitutes. Whatever means need to be taken, I would like to be taken before our kids are taken from schools, because it is being detrimentally affecting them.
Thank you, Kim. I saw Carolyn, and then we'll go to Sergi family. Carolyn, you should be able to unmute now.
Hi, Carolyn Oppenheim, Hunting Ridge Road. I actually have sort of the opposite opinion. I think it's actually a wise choice. I find that the distance learning is difficult. I have children with IEPs and 504s, and it's been a struggle. And to say the very, very least, it's been detrimental to them. However, the most detrimental thing that's been happening is the in, the out, the in again, the out again. We're going to go to school tomorrow. We're not going to go to school tomorrow. They have had no sense of consistency whatsoever. Not from each of the teachers. I have one in high school, one in middle school, and one in elementary school. It's been difficult. Thank God for our teachers, because it's the only reason that they're getting anywhere at this point, because they take the time, especially when they're able to at the distance learning, to talk to them for 10 minutes. So I think the numbers are going to go up. It's not about the testing. I think that the numbers are getting to be as bad as they were in March. And statistics will show that I think that what we saw after Halloween, which was this increase after 10 to 14 days, is going to be even worse after Thanksgiving. And then, I hate to say it, once again after Christmas, because we can't all stay apart. We want to be with our families, and I understand that, but we have to stay apart in order to keep this safe. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. I think we're going to the person with Sergi family, and then we'll go to Nikki.
Hi, Robin Abramowitz, Morehouse Road. I have 3 boys in the schools. I have 2 in elementary school. I have 1 in middle school. I think the teachers are doing a great job with remote learning, but I too want to echo what Kim said, and was very disappointed by Dr. Harrison's email. Yes, the number, I'm a physician in the community. There's no doubt that numbers are going up and that they will likely continue to go up. And if we think that after Christmas they're not, I don't think that that's a reasonable assumption at this point. But what we do know is that schools have not been big transmitters of infection. It doesn't mean there's no infection. They're just not big transmitters of infection, particularly among our youngest students. Once you get older, once you get above 11, 12, into the tween and teen years, they transmit more like adults, but our youngest kids don't. And I think the mitigating practices that we have employed in the schools have done a really good job. And I see it not just in our district, but I see it in our neighboring towns as well, because I don't work in Easton. And I would have hoped that we would have looked more at that data as opposed to just town and community data, and looked at our school data to make an informed decision. I thank you all for your hard work. These are not easy decisions, but I do see the struggles among my children, particularly my youngest. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Nikki, I think you were next. We can't. I think your microphone is turned off. It shows that you're unmuted, but we still can't hear you. We'll come back. We'll come back. I'll keep your hand raised. Beth, and then we'll go to iPhone, and then we'll come back to Nikki.
Oh, hi guys. This is Beth Nat, Mama 4 on Maple Road in Easton. Just wanted to say it's not surprising to me at all that we're staying all out until the new year. Honestly, I won't be surprised as a physician if we stay even a little bit longer than that. And I will say that, if I had to give any feedback, it would be just 2 things. Number one, I actually prefer that we're out for a little bit instead of the switching back and forth. I think these transitions are exceptionally hard for our kids, especially our youngest kids. And just getting them, into the rhythm of distance learning, and it's going actually okay-ish in my house at the moment. The switching back and forth is actually, I think, almost the biggest issue that we have. I would say there's a lot of things that we're not doing with Google Classroom right now that would make things infinitesimally better if we were actually utilizing it to its full potential. We're not utilizing the calendar functionality. There's a lot of inconsistency in terms of how the Google support is actually implemented in every single class. And if we could have that streamlined, I think that would help us tremendously. But thank you very much for your hard work. I know this is an impossible situation.
Thank you very much, Beth. We'll go to, I think, Nikki, you have it. You ready? Okay, we'll give it a try. No, okay. Let's go to, we have somebody indicated as iPhone.
Hey, John, it's Paul Wisda.
Hey, Paul.
I'm trying to update my phone, so thanks for hosting. Yeah, I echo a lot of familiar faces. I was actually the first elementary board meeting I've joined, but just wanted to also thank the board for their continued partnership and willing to lend an open ear. I don't know, I didn't catch the physician's name who commented, but I agree. I think it's disheartening to get the note from Dr. Harrison this evening, pulling the kids out. I think transmission rates, being in healthcare myself, I know when I told my pediatricians last week that we were out, they actually laughed, knowing that the transmission rates are so low. And, the cure rate's so high, the vaccines are coming out, therapeutics coming out, we know more about the disease. I just, I know we're going to look back on this time period and just really second guess ourselves on the damage that we're doing to these kids. And I know it's incumbent on the boards, and especially small towns like us. When I look around and hear Trumbull's back in, they decided to go back in today. Fairfield's in certain spots. Norwalk is in. I just think in small communities and small towns where our transmission rates are even lower, so hard to predict the future and to assume that transmission rates are going to go up after Thanksgiving holiday. That's a lot of assuming. I would challenge the board, especially for the Easton lower schools, to really look at ways to keep these kids in school and get them in school as much as possible. We have options for those parents that don't feel safe, and to have their kids do distance learning if they think that will work for their families. But it's just really disheartening to see the direction that we're going, and it's hopefully over time we'll come to a middle ground and get the kids back in school safely.
Thank you, Paul. I have Gada's phone.
Hi, I have 3 kids. My name's Jada El-Khatib. I have 3 kids in the elementary school.
And I'm sorry, Jada. Can you also just say your street?
Tuckahoe Road.
Thank you.
So I have 3 kids in the elementary school, and I too also am really disappointed in the note that we just received. From the beginning, I feel like we had talked about they should have been pushed in from the beginning while the numbers were so low. And here we all know that the numbers are just going to continue to rise. And the fact that we've taken our kids out so soon before the rise, there may not be a chance for them to go back anytime sooner. I mean, obviously, like we know in Europe, they have all, like, they're pushing for the schools to be in, they're closing down other things. The governor even said that we don't even need to, like, obviously those numbers are there, but at first they said that we didn't have to go by that 25 number because it's by discretion of the town, and our town is so low. We haven't had as many cases. It's obviously going to get worse with the holidays. And I just think these kids really need to be in school. And I'm just so disappointed in the fact that, they're going to be remote until the new year, and who knows what's going to happen after the surge again from Christmas.
Thank you. Kim, sorry, there are a couple of people ahead of you, and then I'll come back to, I see Kim Keel. Okay, Dave Cohen.
Hello, Dave Cohen, North Street, East. I have a few concerns. I think obviously we're going to be distance learning at least for the next month or so. So I think as a parent and an educator myself, I'd like to see some plans firmed up for my children. For example, like how much time the teachers are expected to be online per day, like what the length of each session for the students should be. Obviously kindergartners sessions will be shorter, 5th graders will be longer. Also wondering, if there'll be any adjustments to the schedule so there's less downtime throughout the day. For example, my 5th grader has some time in the morning, and then he has a 3-4 hour gap in the middle of the day, and then has some more time toward the end of the day. So there's a lot of downtime in the middle of the day. We're hoping to be some adjustments on that end. I do echo everyone else's feelings about distance learning, that, we feel like, the transmission within the schools has not been shown to be a tremendous risk. That other towns are open with higher numbers. Other areas in the country and the world also, see higher numbers, but are very much committed to having the children in person learning. As we know, especially for elementary school students, the younger students, being in person learning, with being present with their teachers and with their classmates, is a lot better for them than, being in front of a screen. The two big goals, jobs of the schools are education and socialization, and they're best done for the elementary school children when they're in person, not when they're in front of a screen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. So, Nikki, are you ready? Ready to go?
I think so. Can you hear me now?
Working. It's working.
Thanks. Only took my third grader to get me on my iPhone to do this.
It's always the right answer.
Oh gosh. Nikki Caldowie, 99 Staples Road. My thing kind of goes in line with what Dave was just saying. I understand why we're not in right now. I'm not thrilled about it, but I get it. When we go back, I really, really hope that there's a plan when we go back. I think starting January 4th, I know it's after the new year, but then we're going to have the surge from Christmas. So it's almost like, Martin Luther King weekend, at least we have time in between to see what numbers are, so we don't have to go back and forth. But my biggest thing is I hope that the district is looking into either remote learning teachers for the kids at home, so they get more help when they're home, but also the teachers are not flip-flopping the different, they're pretty much planning one curriculum doing it two different ways. So I just think it's so much on them that it takes a lot on them and the kids in school as well. So if there can be remote learners, remote teachers, or long-term subs who can help out with the remote learning, I think that would really benefit everyone involved. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I see, sorry, people are jumping around a little. Nicole Coco, sorry if I'm butchering that.
Hi, it's Nicole Costantino. I am at 605 Morehouse Road. I have a daughter at Helen Keller, and she is in 8th grade. And we are bummed that obviously she's experienced her last year in middle school, back and forth and at home. And, I'm a mom, and I'm with all the other moms and dads saying that this is it really stinks that these kids are not in school. My problem is I think we need to be all in or all out. The half in, half out, it's just, to me, it's just insane. So what's the point of going half in when you can just go all in? It's not changing the chances of a child getting COVID or a teacher getting COVID. I work for Town Hall in the health department, and the majority of what I do is confidential, but I can tell you on a daily basis, I get 2 to 3 positives a day in Easton. I know that we're a small town, but I can tell you 2 to 3 positives a day in a small town, that's a huge number, huge number. I thank you guys for all you do, all the teachers and the Board of Ed, and thank you for listening. And I hope all stays well.
Thank you, Nicole. All right, I saw, I don't know what happened to Kim. She was on my screen and now she's off. There you are. Good. Okay. Kim, you should be able to unmute now. Good.
Hi, my name is Kim Kyle from 10 Sweetbriar Trail. I am extremely disappointed in today's email, along with the sentiments of others. I feel that decisions that are being made are not reflective of Easton. It's not reflective of a small town. I was an educator for 11 years, and my question at this point is, our kids have been out of school for a year almost, and distance learning is not as effective as being in person. At what point can we not catch these kids up anymore? And I don't like the sentiment of, well, everyone's going to be behind. Because as a parent, that's not acceptable to me. It's just, well, everyone's going to be behind. So supposedly going back January 4th, what intervention strategies are going to be implemented? What intervention strategies are going to be in an action plan for these kids? Because at this point, our kids are going to be out for a year. And as a parent, it's not acceptable to me at all. And I'm very disappointed in today's decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Good. Ms. Bonhoff, you should be able to unmute now.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. First of all, I don't know what email everybody's talking about because I must be on the do not email list these days, but I didn't get it.
Allison, I'm sorry if you could just your name and then your street. Sorry.
Allison Bonoff, Gregory Farm Road.
Thank you.
So first of all, I don't know what email, but obviously I can put 2 and 2 together here. Second, I am disappointed. There's, medical professionals on here that have given their opinion, so I'm not going to even try to, if they can't change everybody's mind on here, then I'm not going to be able to. However, I will echo a lot of other people. I'm so happy to hear it, that other parents are upset and disappointed, and in regard to the instruction that's happening, in regard to the time of the instruction that's happening. I think a lot of people on here from the Board of Ed have gotten my letters, and that was through, I think, maybe October, and the math comes out to 8 hours of instruction per core class this year alone that we are behind. That was through, I think, October. 8 hours per core class. That's huge. That doesn't even take into consideration what we lost last year. And we have had months to put a plan together. We should be in a better place at this point. So I hope that there are discussions going on, and I hope maybe this meeting later by the board members, they're going to tell us some good news about some increased instruction time. I shouldn't have a child coming downstairs, after 5 minutes from 8:05 to whatever until 10 o'clock, and then is downstairs at 2:20. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Today and every Wednesday is still half a day. It's beyond my comprehension. I know everybody's working diligently, and I know the other discussion here may be that there's absenteeism with teachers, etc. But I think the governor announced something today to try to account for that with, other substitute teachers. So there's a lot, I know that you have to discuss, but I am hopeful that tonight we will learn of more instruction time. So thank you.
Thank you. Joshua?
Did I do it? Perfect. Hi. Am I on? Okay. This is Josh Bailey from Sunny Ridge Road. I have 3 children. 2 of them are in Samuel Staples. I have a slightly different view. I would just like to thank Dr. Riddell. I don't think it's an easy decision. It's something we've been struggling with. Obviously, it's not ideal. I would say these are unusual times. I don't think it's normal for the kids to be in school wearing a face mask, 6 feet apart, having a face shield on while they eat a snack. So I think there's a number of things that everyone's trying to deal with here. I am not a physician, but as someone who works in financial services, having the ability to work remote, as many of the folks in other industries, it seems like nothing is ideal, and we're all trying to make the best of it. And hopefully there'll be a positive turn, but taking a prudent decision to stay home to try to lower transmission, I think is a decision that makes sense. And we've been doing the online learning, and I think the teachers have been doing a great job. It's very difficult for them in talking with them about knowing whether they're in or out, and making that decision is just very difficult. So I just want to thank the teachers and everyone for all the hard work. And it's not easy on anyone. And there's no easy decisions here.
Thank you, Josh. Okay. I don't see any other hands up. Very good. That moves us to board member comment. And board members, you should be able to unmute yourself. Go ahead, Jenny. Yes.
Gosh, this sucks. Am I allowed to say that?
I think so. I have a beeper thing. The FCC definitely
right.
come after us, I think.
It won't get any worse than that. A few different things and not necessarily all related. One, I just wanted to thank everybody for their comment because someone contacted me before the meeting and just said, if a decision has been made, I'm just not sure I want to sort of, waste my time saying anything. And just to encourage the public to always express your concerns and to always make your comments. I don't think it matters if a decision has already been made because hearing from everyone and hearing different perspectives might inform the decision the next time around. And I just encourage everybody to pursue all avenues of whether it's email or writing your legislators. I think so much of what we want to do, we're hindered from doing right now, whether it's contact tracing protocols or quarantine protocols, bars and restaurants being opened and schools being closed. I mean, there are a lot of things that are in the way of us, say, keeping an elementary school open because we want to, and there are low transmission rates amongst elementary school kids. So the more people, somebody let them in. The more people that speak up, the more informed our decisions can be. The other thing I wanted to say was in response to a couple of comments of feedback from the last time we were all together that there was some tension sensed, I guess, in the communication amongst the board and perhaps the administration. And I just wanted to remind the public that I'm in year 5 of 6 on the board. Jeff and Randy and I have all worked together for a number of years now. Jeff Parker is the only board chair that I've ever known, or I think Randy has ever known. And we all only ever worked under Tom McMorrin. And we had a huge transition and change to a new chair of the board. And we thank John for taking on that responsibility. With a new superintendent, now we have a new welcome, Mr. Zachary. I haven't had a chance to say hello. New business and finance manager. That's a huge amount of change and transition. And I think if you're seeing anything, it's growing pains. And learning to do things with sort of a new hierarchy under extremely stressful circumstances. All of the new people on board have basically been thrown into the deep end of a lava pool. And we need to just keep giving grace as much as possible as a community, as a board working together. I think that's all I have to say about that. And then just as far as distance learning, I hear a lot of difference in opinion. I think people are having very different experiences, and as much as we can work together as administrators and as a team to try to reach consistency within grade levels and from school to school, I think we're going to see a lot better buy-in and positive response. And just as a slight silver lining, I'm finding it extremely challenging, but also kind of magical to have this rare, never under any other circumstances would I have the chance to see my child interact with his peers and his teachers in this way. I feel like I have this kind of snow globe to look at, and to see what's going on. And we would never have that chance if the kids were in school. So I'm trying to kind of soak it in. But, I recognize how hard it is for everybody. The teachers that I'm experiencing are doing, to use Nikki Kaldawi's words in a message the other day, they are absolutely crushing it. So if you don't feel that way about your child's experience, I just encourage you to keep reaching out and asking questions and pushing us for more. That's it. Thanks. Sorry, that was long.
No, that was great. Thank you, Jenny. Any other board member comment? No. Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead, Randy. Yes.
Yeah, no, I'd just like to welcome Clarence. I hope things go up from here because it's
Get much worse.
a bit of a mess. I don't know. I'm not going to echo. I mean, I'll echo what everybody else said, or the majority of the folks said. It's disappointing. I think, and as board members, you know, we're not part of this decision process. We're not in the loop on making these decisions. So we got this information 10 minutes before you all did in the public. So, but at the end of the day, my personal opinion, and as it was Josh that is in the financial services space, same sort of a numbers person, I think it's always helpful, and it helps take some of the emotion out of it when you understand, or when we understand collectively, the numbers, and that can be anything from infection to transmission to teachers that live out of town that have other issues going on, so we can't staff the schools. There's a half a dozen things at play here, and maybe that's being too generous. But I think some of that information from a mathematical standpoint might be helpful, or it may not be helpful, because it may not point to the concept that we should be distance learning right now. I don't know is the short answer. I don't know if anybody has that information. Maybe the health department does, maybe somebody else does. Very conflicting information that's floated around at a national level, at a state level, and at a local level. So I guess, you know, bear with us. I'll echo one of the things that I heard on from the public, and that is, and I'm probably wrong, but either all in or all out. The hybrid thing, I think we need to toss as an interesting experiment, and I don't think it's helpful. And one other thing I'll throw out there, as board members, I'd like to understand the online daily schedule at our two schools. I don't know that we've seen that. And obviously it's a concern, both as a parent and as a board member listening to some of the public tonight. So anyways, welcome Clarence, and I'll turn it back over to you, John.
Thank you, Randy. And I think Devin had something. I do think we are going to hear from our principals next Tuesday at our regular board meeting. They're going to walk us through the full sort of distance experience, and sort of talk to us more about what that schedule looks like. But and we'll also get to it a little bit in a bit when Dr. Harrison gives us his update. Sorry. Okay, Devin.
Yeah, thanks, John. And welcome, Clarence. It's nice to have you. I know you live in Easton, so it's not a far commute, but we're excited to have you. I want to say, while I'm definitely disappointed, I'm an advocate of in-person school. I wish our kids could be in person. I think it's the responsibility of the superintendent to do what he's done, which is follow the guidelines or the request of the health director in our town, who, based on the email we received, is urging us to proceed with caution. And instead of putting us in school and then putting us out 2 days later or 3 days later, right, like make a decision that allows us to have consistency for our families, consistency for our kids. And I definitely understand we're a dual working household. I have 3 kids, 2 of whom are in school at Samuel Staples. The demands and the needs are very, very challenging on so many of us right now. And so I would encourage us to come together as a community, recognizing that every single person on this call, whether it be our superintendent, a board member, a family member, a faculty member, wishes our kids were in school full time, all in, so they have that normalcy. That is definitely what is right and best for our children. But given the realities that we face, and there's also a lot of outside pressure that unfortunately we can't make the decision as a town of Easton to close bars and nail salons. We can't make a decision to change the way the response has been outside of our small town. And because of that, there are things beyond our control that impact our ability to.
Sorry.
And so I know it's not ideal. It's not what we want, but it's also better than, someone unfortunately getting sick or something awful happening. When we think about, it's not just our kids, it's also the teachers, the staff, the principals, the janitors. It's every single person who has to be in the building that the superintendent is responsible for at the end of the day.
Thank you. Jeff, did you have anything you want to say? Okay.
Well, I think my fellow board members have said it very well.
Yeah. I agree. I'll two quick things, and really both. I think echoing what Jenny said first. Just thank you, Jenny, for your comments. I really appreciate it. And then second, we've also had an excellent experience with distance learning, and I appreciate that for sort of sixth graders, it's a different experience than kindergartners, first graders, et cetera. I think the younger students certainly have additional challenges that don't face sixth graders. But for my guys, they have had an excellent time. And it is, I treasure that unique experience that we've been able to have, which is being able to listen in on those things, standing at the kitchen sink, washing a dish for about 20 minutes as I listen to them in their lessons and interacting with their teachers. And it is remarkable to me how good those teachers are. And I'm jealous of the experience that they're having, just having that great instruction. So I know that, not everyone is having that experience, and we are committed to bringing that to you. So I think to Jenny's point, ask the questions, and we will do our best to try to create the best possible outcomes for students. Gretchen, did you have anything? I'm sorry, I didn't ask you either. Okay. All right, good. That takes us to the next agenda item, item number 4, which is a superintendent update. And we felt it was important to give Dr. Harrison a chance to talk about health data, distance learning. We were not intending that we would be having this meeting 20 minutes after the announcement went out. It was just that just worked out that way. We did not know that we were going to be sending this announcement yesterday when we updated the agenda to have this. We just wanted to really focus on this question because we knew it was important whether or not we were talking about an extension of the current distance position. So Dr. Harrison.
Thank you. So good afternoon and good evening, everyone. I want to start by saying that I echo many of the comments that were shared today. So as much as it was disappointing to receive the email from me, it was disappointing to send it. I'm an educator, and I believe in kids being in the building. I've shared with people earlier this week that, there's a cycle to the school year. And so coming back in from the Thanksgiving break, for me, it's always this sort of a lull, and I get re-energized the moment that I pop into a classroom and see students learning and spend time with them. And so as an educator, it is extremely difficult to make the decision to keep our students learning remotely. I actually scheduled the message to go out, and then I stopped it, and then thought again, and then I resent it. And I only share that to say that it is a very difficult position to be in because I know that the decision has a huge impact on our families, a huge impact on our students. But I also think about when these discussions have come up previously throughout the year, let's say in relationship to athletics, and there were conversations about, if our local health directors say that it's not safe for students to play sports, will superintendents go against what the local health director says? And there was a real consistent sense of, no, we don't want to do that as superintendents, that we really do want to follow the lead of what our health professionals are saying, given that they are privy to information that we're not, and then helping us to think differently about the ways that we are working to keep our students and our staff safe. This decision really reflects a shift in thinking from a reactive mode, that we are waiting for students or staff to become ill or exposed, and then reacting to that, and reacting with either quarantines or reacting with having to close as a result of staffing concerns. And that level of uncertainty is I think, really challenging for our families, exceptionally challenging for our students, and then tough on our teachers as well when it comes to planning. And so, as we were discussing this with the health directors, and then just also talking about what are the lessons that we're learning that we've learned so far in the 6 or 7 days that we've been in distance learning now. What have we seen? And so in talking with our principals across all 3 districts and our administrators, one of the things that we discussed today was a benefit to consistency. And so consistency and predictability, that these are 2 key pieces that we that were a part of the consideration in addition to the health component of this. We have a number of our students and our elementary students in particular who have had to be double quarantined already, and then teachers having to do the last minute shift, the questions of, it's Sunday night, am I going to get an email that there was a positive case over the weekend, and we're going to have to put people out for a day, and that in and out, that level of uncertainty, I think that that it is taken a toll. And so in talking with the health directors about this shift to a proactive approach, it was naturally a shift in thinking. Some of the data that we talked about, that we got yesterday and then talked about also today in the meeting with the health directors. So we've seen this ongoing increase sort of week after week, month after month in the number of positive cases across the district. And so, one statistic that was really sort of telling to think about the ways that our health data has shifted in Easton, and I appreciate the comments earlier about seeing 2 to 3 new cases per day. That's a lot when you're talking about a population of 7,500 people. The number of positive cases, new positive cases in the entire month of September in Easton, there were 7 new cases. In October, there were 14 new cases. And in November alone, there were 59 new cases. And that data really does not include the full component of the positive cases as a result of Thanksgiving. Obviously, we know that is lagging data. And so in thinking about this from a proactive standpoint, part of the question or the discussion that we had was, if we do come back to school on Monday as planned, coming back in a hybrid, that would mean that our cohort A students would be in school face-to-face on Monday and Tuesday, and then of course cohort B students on Thursday and Friday. We're anticipating the post-Thanksgiving cases to be coming in over the next several days, kind of beginning of the week. And so to start with cohort A students and then having to close anyway, then the question is, what's the benefit of kids having to shift another model for 2 face-to-face days of for just half of our students. And then I appreciate the person earlier who just shared about the responsibility of keeping both our students and our staff safe and safeguarding their health. There's the obvious piece here, and as an educator and as an educational leader, which I would, all of our administrators who are in this meeting right now, we are conditioned to make student-centered decisions and really focusing on, what's the benefit for our students. The challenge in this scenario in the middle of a global pandemic is that we are having to really take into consideration the health of our staff as well. And so students, we're having to look at to what extent are we putting our staff members also at risk, and then what would be the long-term impact of that when it comes to the consistency of learning. And so I mentioned that we have kind of our leading indicators and then our secondary indicators. So our leading indicator right now is still above 25 new positive cases over a 14-day rolling average of 100,000 population. That number is actually down from the previous week. And we also saw that testing is down from the previous week. During the week of November 23rd, there were 53 Easton residents who went through testing. If you compare that to the week before, there's 75 tests done the week before and 85 tests done the week before. And so what we're seeing is there's some questions around, how do we explain the decline in the number of tests? These were conversations that we have with health directors today. And some of that they shared could be related to it becoming increasingly harder to get tested, just as far as long lines, obviously the holidays and testing, and really this sense of what's also setting in is COVID fatigue that we've heard about, and the concern is whether or not people are not getting tested, because there's a sense of not really wanting to know, because that means, sort of trying as hard as possible to avoid the requirement to quarantine. And so, these were all of the factors that went into sort of processing through what's the right decision. The number of instructional days or face-to-face days, I should say, between Monday, December 7th, and when we would go back to school. If you think about in a hybrid, those 2.5 weeks, students would be attending about 2/3 of that time face-to-face. And so with the concerns related to consistency, the health risks, does it make more sense to stay all out, kind of what we heard, all out or all in, and really refine what learning looks like during this distance learning period? As John already mentioned on Tuesday, at Tuesday's meeting, our administrators are going to give us a picture of a day in the life of distance learning, and sort of what that picture looks like from a student standpoint. And I think that one of the important pieces here is, what are the lessons that we've already learned? So we are, as I mentioned, day 7 of distance learning, and there's already been, we had some good discussion today in our administrators meeting about some refinements that we could make, even based on some of the feedback that we've heard so far from parents and community members. And so we'll dig in a little bit deeper with that at Tuesday's meeting. But overall, a couple of things that I would say about distance learning, especially when we're thinking about distance learning 2.0 in comparison to what I understand were the experiences in the spring. There's been a very intentional focus on synchronous learning, and really beefing up the amount of time that students are interacting live with teachers. And so for some of the feedback that we get is that's been really helpful. And then we're also getting some feedback that's really difficult, because we're trying to balance that with the amount of screen time, and supporting our teachers as they think about how to take what are common in-person instructional strategies or tools or activities, and thinking about the virtual version of that, and really making sense of that, and using the feedback that we're getting from our students and our parents to make changes over time. So I feel like this is just sort of a lot of information, which basically boils down to, we have our health data that continues to look bleak. We wanted to take a proactive approach to what learning looks like, or the learning model going forward, ensure that there's more consistency, and then really trying to weigh out this idea of interrupted learning versus being in one model consistently, and what's the positive impact there for our students. I'm going to close, and I'm going to give Dr. Pearson-Ugal an opportunity to share as well, because we've been talking through all of these decisions together, and of course, working with our teachers and administrators as well. But I just want to close by saying, just kind of going back to how I started, it is disheartening for me as well. And I really want to be able to send an email that says, hey, just kidding, everybody come back in. And I want to be able to do that and be able to say that I can confidently do that and say that and know that I am, know that I'd be keeping our students and our staff safe. I know that there's nothing that we could do that would eliminate the possibility of any transmission, but I think it is incumbent upon us as leaders, and definitely me as the superintendent, to ensure that I'm doing everything that I can to limit the possibility of exposure. Stephanie?
So I'll add only that since I've been with all of you for a number of years now, and I spent a lot of time this summer working with our leaders to create the reopening plan, we have been and we remain committed to bringing the children of Easton back into the buildings. That is absolutely our goal. The troubling piece of this is that there is simply not a simple or easy route to achieve that goal. And during a time when we are seeing the numbers continue to climb, and we are being urged by our medical advisors and our health directors to consider the health and safety of our students and our staff, and the level of disruption that occurs in the operational level of a school, when on a daily basis, we have to stop what we're doing and spend several hours working with the Department of Health and our nursing coordinator to conduct contact tracing, and then quickly communicate to families to come pick students up from school, to begin the quarantine process. That had been occurring on a daily basis. And based on the information we have as of today, we believe that what we were doing daily would actually be much greater beginning next week, as we see the numbers climb post-Thanksgiving. So while we are absolutely committed to having the students back at school, we are also committed to the safety and well-being of our students, both in terms of their physical health, but also their social and emotional health. And the flip-flop of having students come in and then be told to gather all of their belongings into a bag, and now we're going to send you back home, and doing the same thing for our teachers, is not a healthy way to live. And so we recognize the disruption to families. Many of us are also working parents and feel that disruption as well. And we look forward to a day, hopefully in the not too distant future, when we can look at this in the rearview mirror and say, these are the lessons we've learned, but we did this together. We did our best to make good decisions, and we kept the students' academic and social and emotional and health in the center of our decision making. We believe that the distance learning experience has improved vastly from last spring. And we also know that it will continue to improve. It will continue to improve as teachers are now currently in one model, and not trying to juggle a number of models, and as they continue to work with one another and hone their skills. So we wish that we could send a message to everyone this evening that would make everyone happy. And unfortunately, we're not living in a world right now where that's possible. But we certainly want to work together, and as a number of board members have said, we want community members to continue making comments at these meetings. We don't feel as if because you received a letter that with disappointing news that you should just remain quiet. And if your child's experience in the classroom is either too demanding or not demanding enough, please continue to work with your child's classroom teacher so that we can improve the experience. Because we're in distance learning, our feelings are really no different than they would be if we were fully in person. We are committed to your children and to making this year the best that it can be.
Thank you. So before we leave this topic, any questions for Dr. Harrison or Dr. Pearson-Ugal? Or any of our other administrators on the topic? Sorry, for board members. I'm sorry, Kim. Yeah. At the public comment, we'll have the opportunity at the end as well for comment. But Randy?
Sure. So part of me thinks that this is not going to go away. We're in the winter months. Everyone kind of predicted that spikes would happen. Let's just say, and I don't want to play what ifs, but I think at this point we need to. We talked about this in September. If we're going to be in distance learning until January, and people brought up some interesting points about more social gatherings, Christmas, holidays, New Year, et cetera. Let's say we're in distance learning until April 1st. Where are the kids going to be if, from an education standpoint? Like we talked about this last meeting, I know we'll talk about it on Tuesday. We did some testing early in the year. We kind of benchmarked where kids were, grade levels were vis-a-vis where they should be, so to speak. Where are we going to be if we're distance learning in the next 3 or 4 months? It's a rhetorical question for tonight. Maybe next Tuesday, sometime in between next Tuesday and the meeting in January or what have you. But because I know we're not, but I think to the general public, it feels like we're flying a little bit by the seat of our pants. And maybe we are. Maybe it's not fair to say that we're not, because we are, because the data changes. And Dr. Harrison, thank you for the step function between September and November, and because that's pertinent information for everybody on this meeting to sort of know the quantum leaps that have gone on in the community. But be that as it may, let's play this out, and we got to have, I think, an honest conversation about distance learning potentially for the next 1, 3, 5 months, and where the kids are going to be at that point, and see if we can get them to a point where they would have been, or darn close, if we were in school.
Here. Yeah, Randy, I totally second everything you just said. Gretchen.
Yes, I want to echo the fact that I feel like it is difficult, but in some sense, I feel like what Randy is saying, I think what I'm thinking is, why can't we? Yes, if we were to assume, correct, we're going to have gatherings. We know where we are scientifically with the numbers and where we're going. So if we were to assume we were going to be all out, what does that look like, and how can we improve it?
Yeah, and especially focusing on student outcomes, right? Like what is the best possible student outcomes? Let's hope that we're able to get right back into the beginning of the year. But if we're not, and to Randy's point, let's say that we're April 1st, right? I'm knocking wood, let's not have that happen. But if we were, what is the way that we can use the resources we have available to us to achieve the best possible outcomes? Yeah, good. Jeff. Yeah.
This is a question for Stephanie. Steph, did I understand you to say that every day, or some high percentage of the week, is spent with the kids in school with the nurse doing contact tracing?
what I said was that almost every day in the weeks prior to going out fully, central office spent most of the day working with one of the 5 schools on a new positive case and working then collaboratively with the local Department of Health and our nursing coordinator to go through the contact tracing process.
Okay, I know that I saw a lot of those memos that related to Reading schools. How often did that happen in Easton schools? Did anyone take the time to break that out?
Oh, we have all of that data, and it was 7 days a week. So there are the days that occurred, the cases that we learned about during the day, and then of course it also happened over the weekend and the evening. I don't have that information in front of me, but we certainly have it.
Okay, well maybe that's something to share on Tuesday, because I think it'll put a frame around this and make it a little easier to understand.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Good point. Anyone else have questions? I have a sort of question, concern I want to raise, but I don't want to step on anybody else's toes. I do wonder about the flexibility of the scheduling. I know that there was a goal to keep consistency between the sort of live, sort of everybody's in, to the everybody's in distance in terms of the schedule, especially at the elementary level. I think for the middle schoolers, we've been getting a new schedule and a new schedule, and it's like the kids kind of get used to okay, I have block A and all that stuff, and it's, calculus, I'm pretty sure, is the math that they're doing to figure out the schedules, but they got it. At the elementary level, I think it's a relatively consistent schedule with what they had before, and that actually plays havoc on some of our families who have multiple children at the kindergarten, 2nd grade, 4th grade level, and you have lunch at 10:50, and you have lunch at 11:20, and you have lunch and that works fine when you have bell schedules and lots of teachers, but not so fine when you have one household and one kitchen and a parent who's trying to work. So I wonder, I'm not, saying what is the answer to that question, but it's something that is certainly affecting a lot of people. Jenny, I don't know if you wanted to say anything more about it, and I wasn't trying to steal an issue from you or anything. I wanted to make sure that we sort of raised it.
I think you explained it pretty well. I mean, one thing I didn't mention in board member comment is the length and time that Dr. Harrison has been spending speaking to individuals in the community, and the amount of time that he's spoken to individual board members to get feedback. So I just wanted to thank him publicly for that. Yeah, it's hard. I think we need to try to find a balance between, we've made, agree with Stephanie that the difference in distance learning now from the spring is incredible. I mean, it's not anywhere near the same animal. It's a completely different experience. But in some cases, I think we've overcorrected, and trying to mimic the school day directly, has its issues when you're trying to do that from home. And when I described it to Dr. Harrison, just like you said, John, having staggered lunches works when there's a dedicated facility preparing the meals, cleaning up the meals, supervising students, supervising them at recess. But when you have one individual in a household, or maybe 2 individuals who are trying to work full time and serve in all of those roles at the same time, to then have one child who has a break from 11 to noon and the other one from 12 to 1 is extremely problematic. And it ends up having impacts on work schedules, pulling parents away from work for longer periods of time, as opposed to one concentrated period of time in the middle of the day, or giving one parent a break from doing the distance learning while, maybe the one who's been on calls all morning can jump in and do lunch. And the phrase that I used when I spoke with Dr. Harrison was, the way things are right now, the live streaming, the quality of the instruction that we're experiencing is wonderful, but there's no time in our day as a family for the household to take a collective pause. Yeah. So it creates this sort of running ongoing sort of open, frenetic, back and forth from early in the morning until the afternoon. There's no time when everybody can just sort of exhale, because, one child is eating lunch alone because the kindergarten live stream started at 12 and that lunch break has just begun. So not that lunch is the be all end all, but just the general idea of thinking about how the distance learning schedule is actually put in practice in the house with a family with all of those different competing responsibilities.
Yeah.
And Jenny, we had some really great conversation about that in our admin meeting today. And specifically talking about schedules and the discussion that you and I had earlier this week, and that I have with other parents and board members. And I think this is a really good example of the benefit of getting that feedback from our families. So I think that there are a lot of ways that we have given a lot of thought to distance learning, and what does this look like from the student perspective, from the teacher perspective, from the family perspective. But then it was, okay, so what about the family perspective when you have multiple children in different grade levels, right? And so that was really good feedback. And part of the discussion that we had, again, talking about the benefit of consistency that we had today with our administrators was, okay, we're now not just thinking about distance learning for 2 more days to the end of the week. So, when you're talking about revamping schedules, and again, I think it's important to note that one of the driving factors behind trying to think through maintaining a very similar schedule for distance learning that students would have during the day, particularly at the elementary level, was for consistency and to continue, help them to continue in that routine, but also to make sure that all of our students who are receiving any kind of support services through SIT or through based on their IEP, that we knew that the service providers can meet the obligated hours of time or minutes of time with students if we stick to the same schedule. It's not that we're not willing to think differently about that schedule. And I think now that we know that this is going to last longer, that was some of the discussion that Ms. Fox Santora had with her colleagues today, and thinking about what the next steps are there. So that is something that we're looking at as well.
Great. Anything else on this topic before we move on? Anyone? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for the conversation. So in teeing up this sort of discussion and possible action number 5. So, we were not anticipating that we would be sort of so focused on this conversation tonight, or that the decision would necessarily be made tonight. And so this was meant to be primarily a discussion about our sort of how we think about our enduring goals and our mission as a district, how we think about the sort of budget process, and making sure that we have multiple opportunities to talk as a board, along with administrators to help give us context and to weigh in and to sort of help us all develop our understanding for what our mission is as it relates to the programs that we might fund, not just this year. Certainly we are engaged in the problem of what do we need to do for this year, but longer term, how would we want to invest from a strategic goals standpoint, from the programs we'd want to put in place? I think a perfect example of that is what we did last year by sort of creating the Junior Bridges program, and the great work that Jen is doing there to help us move towards a solution that's better for students and certainly better for the sort of finances of the town and the budget that we're going out and getting, looking at those opportunities to do that. And I think starting not with a prioritization process, but with let's just talk about all of the things that we think could be important and getting that out there. I think ultimately the unifying message that I would sort of say between what we just spent an hour and 10 minutes talking about and what was the original, intent of the meeting is student outcomes. The idea that we should ultimately be focused on what is it that we're trying to do, what is the best possible outcome that we can create, whether we're talking about the very difficult situation we find ourselves in because of this awful pandemic, or we're talking about a post-COVID world where we're able to think strategically about how we want to educate the children. So because we did spend sort of so much time in this other realm, I'm not proposing that we sort of dive as deep into this as I was hoping we'd be able to get, but I think it's okay. So I'm planning on going through item A and B on the agenda, current budget timeline process review, which should take just a minute, and then highlighting the enduring goals and mission, and just sort of spending a little bit of time on that. And then I hope we'll be able to spend a little bit more time on this topic next Tuesday at our regular board meeting. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here and go to presentation mode. Okay, so this is the budget process that we reviewed last board meeting, at our regular board meeting in November. I just want to sort of quickly recap this. We essentially are saying this process should span 4 months. We hope that will be the case. We are looking at a sort of a start of the sort of formal process where we will be evaluating our sort of contractual obligations, the places where, whether it's a function of the contracts that we have with administrators, educators, non-certified staff, custodial staff, food service contracts, transportation contracts, ventilation contracts, like all of those places where we have contracts, as well as the employee healthcare part of this. Where do we have obligations where there's very little flexibility in the budget there? Then in January, the intent would be that we move on to the discussion of positions and programs. What are the things that we want to invest in? What are the things that we think are important to create or to put more money into to help them grow? That will, I think, largely be a culmination of the conversations that we're starting tonight, that I hope will further a little bit in the context of next Tuesday, and maybe another meeting in between, hopefully a brief meeting to just sort of continue the conversation about our strategic goals. In February, we would hope to present and I hope vote and approve amongst our board a complete budget that would have sort of all of the elements. And then in March, we would submit that to the Board of Finance, and hopefully be able to remove that revised section and move straight from present to and review to approve and celebrate. So are there any questions about this process or concerns with the process? I'm absolutely, this is not me saying this is what we're doing. This is me proposing, I think, a process that makes sense. But certainly if people have feedback, like let's hear it.
How does Clarence feel about this?
Very good question. Clarence, do you want to weigh in?
I have a question, not a feeling. So am I to understand, I guess my question is, what deliverables would you be expecting from us based on the schedule? And I ask that question because I'm just going to give you typically what happens in other school districts. So I'm new here, we all acknowledge that. In other school districts, the building level administrators develop their budget. They turn it over to someone like me who then tweaks it and it becomes my budget. Then I turn it over to the superintendent and the superintendent tweaks it and becomes his or her budget. And then that superintendent presents it to the board as this is the superintendent's proposed budget for whatever. Another thing we need to talk about, this is maybe the lawyer in me, technically, it's not a budget. It's on the Connecticut law, it's an itemized estimate of expenditures. And that's a key definition because we're giving you an itemized estimate of what we're planning to spend the money. It means we're not guaranteeing it's going to be spent that way, but it's an itemized estimate. So given that that's typically what happens in public schools in Connecticut, I'm trying to mirror what my past experience has been and how you're viewing this, because typically I won't see you all until January or February, but on this, I may be seeing you next week. So I need to know what your expectations are, because whatever you want, we'll make it happen, but I need to know what you're expecting.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to invite Dr. Harrison into that conversation as well, right? So this is roughly the process that we used last year. And I think it was a sort of fairly effective process, with some tweaks. And I think ultimately what I think we're saying is we want to make sure that we're focusing our attention where it's best spent. We always should be mindful, certainly, of our contractual obligations. But at this point, there's very little for us to do about those obligations. And so the point in our December meeting, what we would be expecting next Tuesday, is simply a summary of what those obligations are. So I suspect that that's a relatively straightforward thing to do, to say what will in 2021-22 budget year, estimated expenditure.
If you look,
it doesn't roll off the tongue, so I hope you won't mind
estimated
if I say that.
itemized expenditures. I know it doesn't roll off the top, but that's how the state statutes read.
I'll switch my terminology to match that. But if we think about that sort of December meeting, it's to sort of set the table and help us all to understand sort of the place where we are sort of making some of these decisions about where we want to invest, and to be able to partner with Dr. Harrison in that phase where it becomes his budget.
John, is it okay if I jump in for a second?
Please do. Yeah.
Again, Clarence, welcome. Enormous welcome. We're thrilled to have you. At this point, I'd like to hear the historical perspective for what your experience is. I think just to illustrate the contracts and healthcare part, it's really helpful for us to know going in the total pressures on the budget just from our contractual obligations. So if we know that contractual obligations alone are going to push the budget up by 2% or 3% or whatever, that kind of gives us a frame of reference for what we just kind of get a sense of what are we going to be able to do with the rest of the pieces of the puzzle.
That makes perfect sense to me, because I had this conversation with some one-on-ones with you, some of you individually. Typically in a school budget, 70-80% is what we call people and benefits. Mm-hmm. And if you've got contractual obligations of those, and that's 70-80% of your budget, then that's sort of the majority of the discussion. So what I'd be, based on what I'm seeing here, what I'd probably be showing you is, all right, for each bargaining unit, these are the contractual obligations, and you've already negotiated and agreed to this, and this results in this much of an increase. Mm-hmm. Assuming a status quo, meaning no one new has been added or whatever, it's a status quo. And then with the healthcare, we generally have projections about what, a premium increase or whatever. And I don't know if I'll have that by next Tuesday. I don't know if it's already been ascertained yet, but that I have to figure out. But just sort of give you the lay of the land about what to expect and essentially what we've already agreed to in our bus contract, our food service, and that generally I'd look to present that on a percentage basis and an actual dollar amount. This is what we've already agreed to, and this is what you should expect. So if that's already, and I think and some of you, I had the conversation during my process of joining the district. It's an interesting thing when boards of eds agree to contracts or equate to a 3% increase, and then they ask for a 1.5% increase. And sort of like, well, the math doesn't add up. We can make it work. That means we're cutting something. And I think this approach is helpful, so we make the public aware that 70-80% of your budget is already accounted for. And then if you move on to those initiatives and programs next, if you really want this for the children, it costs money. What are you willing to pay for? And then you get down to it, and then you've got sped costs. You got it gets down to the point where what you only have is maybe 6 to 5% that you're really sort of negotiable, that you can do something with. Otherwise, you're cutting programs, and we've had such an excellent educational program here, and I don't think anyone in the community wants to do that. So it makes it difficult. How do you stay within certain budgetary parameters, knowing that you're locked in for 90+% of your budget?
You sure you haven't been here before?
I have the scars from other locations, so it's everywhere I go, it's the same conversation. It's trying to get people to understand that the vast majority of the allocation is spoken for before day one.
Yep.
The important part that I heard you mention is communicating that to the community. And a lot of the work that Jeff did last year was to start this process much earlier in the fall. And the benefit to us is to just keep our relationship with the Board of Finance as open and positive and communicative as possible. So if they know as well going in what the pressures are from things that we basically can't do anything about, that just helps us to keep lines of communication open with them and have better discussions with them early, rather than later.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree there, Jenny. And actually next week we've invited the chair of the Board of Finance to join us, and he's going to give us a little bit of some context for sort of current state of play and all of that. So completely agree. It's really important that we have a good relationship there, and they understand what we're trying to do, and we understand sort of the situation the town finds itself in.
So I can work with this now. I know what you're looking for, and that is an easy ask for next week. The one thing I have to just go check on the status is any projections for healthcare for next year. I don't know if we have those yet or not. We may, but I just have to go make the inquiry.
Excellent.
Yeah, Clarence, I think if you contact Rob Fitzpatrick, he'll be able to give you that. And I'm not suggesting that is the end all and be all, but I think it's a starting point. Given the large reserve that we have, we may be in a position to ask a little less of the public for next year and work off some of our reserves. So, I mean, that's a conversation that we as a board have to have.
Yep.
But it would be good to get Rob's perspective as to where the starting point is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good. Any other board member or administrator questions or comments about the process?
John, I just have one more. Clarence, were you able to find that status quo report from last year?
Mr. Parker, I had a conversation about it earlier this evening. This year's report has not been completed as of yet.
Right.
Not ready to go, but I was someone shared with me last year, so I know what you're talking about, but we don't have the one for this year ready yet. And I won't call by the name you use, and I won't call by the name the individual used, so we'll.
Yeah, I think I liked your term of status quo report. I think that makes a lot of sense.
It's very agnostic.
Exactly.
All right. Any other questions or comments about the process?
John, is part of this line item is timeline and process. Is this your idea for the timeline?
Yeah, sorry. The timeline being sort of in December we do this, January we do this, February. Did you have other thoughts about what would equate to
I just don't know if that kind of comports with what Clarence just talked about. Maybe it does, but
okay.
It does not, but once again, that's been my experience elsewhere. What I have to adjust to what you and the community are looking for. Now, maybe you want to see what other districts are doing, but the sort of key foundation is having an understanding of what the building leaders need to educate the children. They're the boots on the ground, so know what they need. Then having a conversation with Rydell and Stephanie at sort of the 10,000 foot level about, does it fit our goals and mission? And John, if you recall that conversation I have with you about, in order for me to tie the dollars to how we spend it, I have to have a clear vision about what the goals and visions are. That way, when I have to make decisions about something getting cut, I don't cut something that's critical to the goals and mission because I'm unaware of it.
Yep. So I'm wondering, does that mean that January conversation needs to happen sooner?
At least with me and Stephanie and Rydell, it does. If the board wants to be involved, I would say yes, but I need to have a conversation from the CEO of the organization and the leader of the academic realm to say, Clarence, this is what we need. This is what we're focusing on, and it costs X. Please find funding for it. And then if they want to have the conversation with you and the board, that's great. But by January, I'm hoping to have things sort of tidied up and ready to go. But once again, this is obviously a different year with the pandemic, and we've got a new ERP program platform that goes live on January 1. So it's things are sort of in flux, so to speak.
Yeah.
What could go wrong? I mean, what could go wrong? Nothing. I mean.
Yeah. So I wonder, and I was planning on having more sort of exploratory conversations in that space around the positions and programs, but I think it may be useful then for us to try to spend a little bit more time. I wonder if we can be concise, given what was just said about the contracts and healthcare, the sort of everything in that column and the sort of immutability of that. Maybe there's an opportunity to be very concise about here's what it is. we don't need to bemoan it. We don't need to, pull our hair out. We can say, this is what it is. And now let's talk about positions and programs with Dr. Harrison and Dr. Pearson-Ugal.
I think that would probably be appropriate. The only sort of caveat I'd add to that is there are certain pressures that could occur in the schools based on changing class sizes, meaning one grade level needs an additional teacher because the numbers. So we have the caveat there. We may need an additional FTE here or there, which obviously has an impact on the bottom line.
Yeah. I don't think the expectation would necessarily be that in next Tuesday meeting that we're looking at projections, that we're looking at, sort of the dollar amounts attached to any of these things, but to have a sort of prioritization, like we want to engage with Dr. Harrison and Dr. Pearson-Ugal in conversations about what matters to us and where, to help inform what they would put forward, what they would recommend for those things as well.
If you had that conversation next Tuesday, it'd be very helpful for me.
Yeah.
Post Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so just sort of digging in a little bit to this sort of this exercise or this sort of focus on how we think about what we value and centering it around sort of what we've said before our enduring goals and aspirations. So these are taken from, and I think Dr. Harrison has recently presented these in various presentations. We've called these our ABC, right? And it's a sort of academic excellence, building a caring community, cultivating future-ready learners. And so what I was hoping, we could do is to have a conversation about sort of what each one of these mean, to sort of validate, to say like, we agree with these, would we want to either now or over time amend these? And then on the right-hand side, I just tried to sort of pull out the bullets from those things and think about it in terms of what would you observe in a learner who's gone through that. And that, the sort of ellipses here is meant to say like, what do other people take away from these principles? What do we think we see in this as who we're trying to, sort of, or what we're trying to do rather, with our goals and aspirations in our schools. So I'll give folks a moment, and I would say probably to just consume the content on the left-hand side. And then, anyone who has questions or comments or wants to jump in, feel free.
I would just say, I think in a year where we're coming off a pandemic where a lot of our kids have been, it kind of falls under all three of these, but I do think it's kind of missing in the bullets on the right around catching kids who are on the bubble or kids who have fallen behind, like this idea of accelerating learners or assessing for growth or something. Just, it's in academic excellence, but it's different this year because it's not going to be a normal year.
Yeah, I think that's right. Any additional comments or thoughts about this?
I think it's a little difficult to have this conversation until we know where our kids are. It seems to me that, and obviously this has to be tied back to the budget, because if there's things that we need to prioritize, we have to know what that's going to look like in terms of what they are and what the costs are, et cetera. But I'm not sure I don't know how we can prioritize those things if we don't have a good sense about where our kids are right now, or the end of December, the end of January. I just think this is going to be, it's going to be difficult because we may be glossing over something that our kids very much need based upon where they are academically, that we didn't think we would have to even consider.
Yeah, and I think not even, I would say that the prioritization of these items isn't even necessarily the prioritization of programs that support these, right? To say that, we want to create informed citizens. Okay, so to what degree do we offer a civics, program at the middle school or at the elementary level? We want them to be collaborative? Like, how do we infuse that in? Do we need to do some professional development to allow our teachers, like all of those things? So there could be a prioritization of each one of these items that we're seeing, but it's ultimately the budget's going to be a prioritization of programs that support these items. And I think it's really meaningful to say, coming out of a pandemic year, we hope that the school year that we're talking about here will be fully post-pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah. And so coming out of that year, there will certainly be some degree of how are we catching students up? And of these elements that we see here, and maybe others that aren't on the list, what do we need to focus on for a 2021, 2022 year that actually helps us to drive, sort of drive back towards these things? Maybe we're having trouble living up to the lifelong learners one and sort of all that goes into creating a lifelong learner, because we're just trying to establish they're engaging in healthy relationships and they're active thinkers or able communicators. And is that a part of what you're saying, Jeff?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Jeff, I think one way to get at that, and I think, Devin, this is kind of connected to your point as well, under academic excellence, it seems like there's an opportunity there to really talk about each student growing academically across a continuum of learners, right? So I think that the natural place where we are in the middle of a pandemic and challenges to what traditional learning looks like, we're thinking of how do we close gaps if there are gaps in learning for students. But I think another piece related to this is how do we stretch and push students who are ahead, and really some of that extension work and building sort of depth of knowledge. And when I think about this in relationship to many of the conversations that I had with our families during my listening tour that recently ended, I heard a lot of that we want to make sure that we are enriching our students who are already meeting our expectations, so that there is sort of pushing them academically.
John,
yeah, I would say. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Devin.
Just like, I always sometimes feel like we, in all of these, it's baked in, but I would just say it explicitly, like, you have to also prepare your teachers to do all these things. And so this push on professional learning, not only for our educators, but also for our, amazing administration, like, in order to build caring communities, cultivate future-ready learners, and create academic excellence, we have to support the people who are doing that work. And so how do we do that? And so much of this is like very focused on our kiddos. And I want to make sure that at the core of our kids being successful is our faculty and staff and our administration being prepared and successful.
Yeah. Jenny?
Hi, I was just going to say that I think this budget planning for next year is actually going to be fairly straightforward, because what we really need are sort of the founding principles of what makes our system work. I think, help me out with the calendar. 2020, 21, 2022 is going to be a year of healing. I think it's going to be a year of reflection. I think it's going to be a year of assessment and goal setting. I think the remainder of this year is probably going to continue to have disruptions, and we're still going to be kind of in this, like, let's keep everybody together. There's still going to be the uncertainties of, a vaccine or not a vaccine. It's going to still be a tumultuous year. And if we are fortunate enough to be sort of on the other side of this, I think we're going to need to, and Devin spoke to it, we're going to need to prioritize time, maybe more time in the summer than we've been able to fund in the past, for teachers to come together, to work, to plan, to look back, to look forward, all of those things they need to do, but they're not going to be able to do that. What we're asking of them in terms of where are kids and what are we going to do to make sure that they're where they need to be in the future can't happen in 3 days before school starts a year from now. It's going to need to happen over weeks at the end of the year and over weeks during the summer. And we're going to need to support teams of people coming together to have those conversations, for Stephanie to be able to work with teams and put those plans in place and in motion for when the school year begins the following year, right? Because like we said, we don't want anything less for our kids and for our teachers. I think it's going to be a year where we've always prioritized class size, but to throw kids into anything less than small, cohesive communities and units would be incomprehensible at this point. I think we're going to need a robust, very robust mental health staff and faculty. This is not the year to cut back your school psychologist or make do with a social worker who's spread too thin. Or to have caseworkers in special ed, overburdened with loads that are too large. Maybe we want to increase the number of paraprofessionals so that we can service all of the students who are going to need those individual pullouts and things in the following year. I know I'm painting a picture of at least sustaining what we have, if not thinking about meaningful increases in faculty and really, really making sure that we keep our class sizes small so that our teachers can do the work that we're going to ask them to do. And it's going to be a difficult year following this. Even if we're in the building and kids aren't wearing masks anymore, it's going to be a challenging year to work through the aftermath of all of this.
Well put. I think Gretchen?
Echoing what Jenny's saying, I was going to say, I think that it would be helpful for us to hear from the people who are in the building about what and how long they think that recovery, if I could call it that, will take, because clearly it will be that. I agree with Jenny fully. We are clearly going to go through the rest of this year, whether or not, even if we went back fully in January, which, doesn't seem realistic, getting to the end of the year is going to be tricky. And what and how long is it going to take for us to get back, to the norm, whatever that is. And then, so what is that gonna cost and what is that gonna mean for us? But unless we hear from them, it's talk. So why don't we, find out exactly what they know. Clearly they can't predict either, but as much as they know and where we are with testing and where the kids are and where they think they're gonna be, as much data as we can get will help inform us.
Good. Dr. Harrison or Dr. Pearson-Ugal, or any of our administrators, anything you want to sort of add to, because I think that's really recentered the way that I think about it, sort of the recent conversation about sort of just the kind of the tone we would take as we think about what's really necessary for the 21-22 school year.
I'll jump in first, and then I'm sure Stephanie wants to add to this. Stephanie's been working with our administrators and also with our teacher leaders on analyzing our fall data and really crafting the plan for what do next steps look like. I think that that we are going to be in a really good position to be able to estimate what some of those needs may be next year. But I think also, part of what we want to be able to at least live through to some extent is looking at the interventions that we're putting in place now in response to what our fall data looks like. And then also any changes that we're making to core instruction to that tier 1 level. And then being able to see, so what are the benefits of that? Is that working? And that, I think, will give us some direction sort of going forward. I think when it comes to sort of looking at a big picture, what some of the anticipated needs are, Clarence really touched on this right at the beginning. Our biggest resource in the district is our people. And so, that's the biggest lever that we have with our students, and the more that we can invest in supporting our teachers and our administrators through professional learning, professional development on leading this work and on implementing these strategies and processes, I think that's where we'll be able to see, a pretty significant benefit in the long run. But I'll let Stephanie talk more specifically, because I know that there's been a lot of these conversations happening.
I know I really just agree with what you just said. We are still in the process of analyzing the data from the schools in Easton and Reading and getting it in a consistent format, so that we can more accurately make statements regarding the percent of students at any grade level that would in any typical year qualify for tier 2 and tier 3 support, and what that might look like this year when we know that much of the support might need to occur in classrooms and not necessarily by specialists if the specialist load is just overburdened. I can say at this point that it is not as grim as some might suspect, that the challenges that some of our students have faced appear to be in bubbles and not necessarily systemic. And it's a little bit too early for me to make any further statements about it. But I think at first glance, while I can't say that it will be a typical year in terms of our student performance, it's also not across the board. All students are going to need tier 2 or tier 3.
I think early on there were some thoughts that there would be some who were really struggling, and some that maybe had gone ahead, and some that I know you just said characterizing it further would be difficult. Are you seeing it that at least hints of those kind of wide dispersal of the data, or does it tend to be just like a little pocket, and everybody else pretty closely together?
Well, wide dispersal, in that I can't at this point even say across the 2 districts in a particular grade level, in a particular subject, this is what we noticed, which makes me believe that it much more aligned to the individual student experience down to the classroom level. So it's information that we're looking at carefully, because we need to plan, as others have said, we need to plan for the remainder of this year. We're not even to the halfway point, and to consider how we can support our students this year, and then whether there will be a budgetary impact next year in terms of personnel, but also in terms of adjustments to curriculum work or intervention plans, possibly staffing.
And I'd be interested in, and I don't know if Stephanie, you're the right person to ask or not, but I'd be interested in support of, I think, what Devin and Jenny and others have said related to the importance of investing in sort of counselors and sort of all of that. Are we seeing sort of evidence of, sort of the individual, you just talked about, could be individualized down to the classroom. I suspect some of this is individualized down to household, where there are some students who are living with a lot more stress than they were before, because of parents who have had changes in work situations, and just the overall feeling of anxiety and stress that I think we've all been living under since March-ish, that just goes way beyond anything we've felt. I know I've had to apologize for yelling at my kids a lot more than recently. I wish it was just a matter of now they're in middle school, but we've all been more stressed, and are we seeing that?
I think that actually the building principals would be the best people to ask for this more specific information. But I can say that when we developed our plans this summer, we did so in a manner that considered those social and emotional needs, and we certainly tried to build in the supports and the connections so that our students, regardless of the model, would be connected to an adult at school. We know that having that trusted relationship is so important to students. And so I hope that some of those, the conditions that we created in our plans have supported our students. So hopefully fewer need the real intervention. But I can't say that we haven't needed to do anything greater than what we would typically do.
Okay. Board members, anyone else have questions, comments, thoughts about anything we're seeing here that, as we think about our enduring goals, and then specifically the things we want to focus on, do we see anything that's missing from this when we think about the sort of special focus we want to add for the 21-22? I mean, we just talked about it's going to be a bit of a different year.
Don, the only thing that I don't see specifically alluded to is any of the work and discussion around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, looking at our, we're very fortunate to have, our second step program, and just to maybe hear from the task force and the committees that are doing that work about any specific, oh, sorry, it's getting late. Specific, financial needs to support that work. We don't want to lose sight of making progress in that area just because we're sort of triaging the basics.
Yep. Here. Good. Thank you. Okay. Anything else from anyone? All right. I think unless anyone objects, I would say we can move past. I think we had some conversation there about C, and I think we move into public comment. So members of the public, again, you can raise your hand in the participant window, or you can turn on your video and wave at us, and we will allow you to unmute. Okay. Seeing none, maybe we do. No. Okay. We'll move on to board member comment. Sorry, Jeff, I am going to recognize you in just a minute. I just want to check in. David, were you attempting to provide comment? I'm sorry, I think we don't actually have audio for you. It looks like you may have to enable audio. Lower left-hand corner, you should see a little audio thing there, and you just want to connect to audio. There you go. I see it. Okay. It doesn't look like it's working.
You can type a question or write something to us in chat.
We tend to turn it off because it can get very distracting, and yeah, so I can turn it on right now. David, if you wanted to put your comment into a chat message, and we can see that there. While you're doing that, Vivian, did you have? Yes, Vivian, please. Oh, let me hit that again. You should be able to unmute now.
Thank you.
Sure.
Vivian Hardison, Sherwood Road, and welcome to Dr. Harrison. I think you, a fellow alum UNC system, I think. Can't remember, but I wanted to officially welcome you. I haven't had a chance to chat with you, but you'll hear about me later. I have two questions for the board. One, do you think your budget is really going to change a lot in light of what's been happening with COVID-19? do you think it's going to increase or go down? Because I'm thinking about the impact that it's having on the teachers. Maybe I heard some comments about maybe some impact on social emotional well-being for the teachers. Maybe they need to be more of that. This is probably something Dr. Kim Fox-Santora would probably have to address. But I'm thinking because of what I see with my grandson, who's a special needs child. And by the way, Mrs. Adelman is a phenomenal teacher. You couldn't have gotten a better teacher for my grandson, Kim. Thank you so much. And Kim is an amazing principal. But I see the hard work that teachers are going through with dealing with the distance learning. And whether you go back full-time distance or not, my grandson probably will not be going back to school like that because he is a high-risk kid in terms of exposure to the virus. So that's another conversation. But I wanted to know specifically about the budget, whether or not you think that's going to change. And in view of the fact that you may have to, in 2021, engage more paraprofessionals in supporting the teachers with their mental health and well-being. That's my question.
Thank you, Vivian. And just for your benefit and everyone else's, just the sort of the way that the sort of the structure, you know, we follow the sort of Robert's rules for meeting interactions, and so there's not really a sort of question and answer. However, up next is board member comment, and board members can choose to, you know, sort of respond to some of the topics that you raised. So thank you, Vivian. David, we want to maybe try it again. You should have there you go. I think that's working.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Yeah, my comment is just, you know, and I missed the first part of the meeting, so I apologize if it was already covered. But my comment is, at least from our perspective here, I mean, the experience, and I know it's a difficult situation, so I understand that as well. But there is no equivalent to having kids in the school. The message received tonight is really another blow. I mean, it's not a good thing to have kids out of school for essentially 8 months. And I'm really not concerned about the academics. I'm concerned about the social and emotional aspects of this. Our kid is not the same as what she was in March. It's just a fact. And the longer this goes on, I'm very concerned about where we're headed. Mm-hmm. Academically, I don't really care, but emotionally and socially, that's what I'm concerned about. And I would hope that the board and our local health directors will start taking direction from the CDC, who now says all kids should be back in school. That's what they're telling you. And so when people start deviating from that, I've got real issues with it. And I understand the decision's been made, but I certainly hope January kids are back in school where they belong. So
thank you,
just
David.
wanted to get that. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Okay. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I see Allison. I think you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Sure.
Two quick things. Great. Allison Bonoff, Gregory Farm Road. I don't want to. I want to make sure we also move forward. I've heard a lot of, you know, emotional, etc. Needs, but let's also talk about what we want to do as a district and look outward. STEM, very important. And let's not lose sight of those kind of things. The other thing is totally that we didn't discuss tonight, but we should be thinking of is the next debate is going to be about immunizations. We're going to have a big debate about that. It's going to be a nationwide debate. There's going to be non-vaxxers. There's going to be ones that say you have to do it. Who knows what's going to happen with the new presidency? Is it going to be a federal mandate? Is it going to be a school thing? Is it going to be by states? But we have to start thinking about this. This is going to be the next big debate that is going to take up all of our board meeting time. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no additional hands raised, we'll move on to board member comment. I think Jeff, you were up first.
Thank you. I think we've had a pretty good discussion this evening. But the one thing that I want to be sure that we do before we start implementing what we think is going to be best for our kids, that we understand where our kids are. I know testing is one way to do it. It's a formal way, it's a concrete way, but there's certainly other ways to add to that, so that we have a good sense about where kids are, because putting together any kind of programs I'm afraid we'll miss the mark if we don't know where kids are. Secondly, as to the question about the budget, we are doing well relative to what our total budget is. We've spent about half of the money that we had set aside for COVID, and we're still tracking ahead. Remember that we did not have a summer school program this year that involved transporting kids to the buildings, and now that we are back in distant learning, I'm expecting a credit on the $1 million contract that we have with the buses. So I think there will be some money there at the end of the year for us to make some decisions that will certainly in some ways be immediate, and some that might be longer term. So I think somehow we are going to come out of this from a financial side with some money to invest in our kids and our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other board member comment?
Don, it's more of putting a question out there, possibly for discussion next week. You know, in the spring when our support staff, like bus drivers and cafeteria workers, were out of work, you know, we obviously were all very concerned for them. And I know there some arrangements were made with the bus company, you know, with different plans. So I would just like to know sort of how those folks are being impacted with our decision to remain in distance learning.
Yeah, a very, very good question. I don't know that we necessarily have the answer tonight, but to your point, we'll make sure that we address that next Tuesday.
Well, the short answer is we are paying the bus company for all the salaries of the bus drivers. And to the extent they're not paying them, then they owe us that money back. But we're paying the bus company to employ the drivers. Is that your question, Jenny?
I guess so. So if we could just find out if the bus company is paying our drivers during this period of time.
Well, we have a contract with them that says they are. So as far as we can tell, the answer is yes.
All right. So having not heard from them that they are doing anything different, then we assume the drivers are getting paid.
Yes, and otherwise they'd be in violation of the contract.
Right. Yeah, and I think it would probably be pretty lightweight for us to verify that. And then other non-certified staff as well. Right. You know, pretty much everybody from our custodial staff to anybody that would fall under a non-salaried contract. I'm curious and a healthy level of concern. Yeah, and I really appreciate that, Jenny, because the sort of the B of our ABCs, building a caring community, it doesn't say students will contribute to a dynamic. It says each member of our community. And these are all members of our community. So I really appreciate sort of centering us there on, you know, this isn't just about the students and the teachers. There are others in our community that matter. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Jeff. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Randy. All in favor? Very good. We are adjourned at 9 p.m. Thanks, everyone. Thank you very much.
See you Tuesday.